Welcome to the Tech Log, your weekly log entry at the intersection of technology and business. Short episodes, real conversations. Let's get underway. I came across a quote this week that I haven't been able to shake quite yet. When everyone can build without effort, the value of building also decreases. We're going to talk about maybe how true or how untrue that quote is today. This week I was listening to Kat Wu on Lenny's podcast. I'm not sure if either of you have ever listened to that podcast. It's quite good. But Kat Wu is the head of product for Claude Code right now. And she talked in depth about how cheap the resource of coding has become since the emergence and success of AI. The value is no longer just in the building, she had shared, which I agree, but it's the idea, the refinement, and the delivery. And that brings us to this concept of vibe coding. So welcome to Tech Log. This is episode number 3, Vibe Coding Beyond the Vibe. So Jeff and Lisa, you have stepped away from the phrase vibe coding. You've landed on something different. Internally, with our clients, we are using the term AI accelerated development. What does that term mean to you, and why is that distinction so important?
I'm the one that does not have a traditional software development background. I have never been a coder per se. I mean, I had a blog in 2003 and I bought a book on HTML and taught myself how to write that, but I don't think that counts now. When I first started building an application in Replit, I was vibe coding. I was like, oh, I wanted to do this. I wanted to do this. And I wasn't putting a lot of thought into it. I was just experimenting and seeing what was possible. And in my mind, that was the equivalent of wireframing or building a prototype, right? I built like a functional prototype in Replit. And then I very quickly realized that I didn't have data persistence and I didn't tell it what I wanted the data model to be. And so I started arguing with it very quickly because I do have experience architecting and designing solutions and UIs and workflows and all these things that I wanted to have happen. And so I do think that there is a difference between what people are thinking of as vibe coding, which is anybody can just go onto one of these platforms and be like, hey, build me something that does this. Whereas I think a lot of times what we're doing now is AI accelerated development because we are coming into projects, whether they're potential products or solutions we're building for ourselves or things that we're now building custom for our clients. And we're coming in with requirements document and, I would say even more detailed requirements than we have traditionally provided to human beings. And Jeff has also worked on like a tech stack and a framework for the foundation of what we're building. He refined that over a period of 18 months. So we're not just going into an AI tool and saying, hey, build us this. We're like, hey, here's the reference architecture and stack and all the rules about what you can and cannot do. Here's the requirements for this particular project or this particular solution. And then I think that's, and we're using standard practices for testing and deployment and using development environments. And there's a production instance and a test instance and all these things that to me, that's not vibe coding. That's a lot of work. Whether you're using AI or not, that's a lot of work.
I started programming when I was 3 in a language called BASIC. And then, in college, did some Fortran, Pascal. When they were writing the book on C++, I took that class. Got into PHP when it first started in MySQL and been doing it for a long time. And I've always said that a language is a language, syntax is syntax. And now we're at the point with these tools that they have access to, whether it's they're getting trained on GitHub or other people's open source projects. They are able to code and code well faster than any human being ever would be able to. And you see that with companies like Google saying that, I think the 75% of their development now is done by Gemini. Same thing, Facebook. And, a lot of people are using these tools at the enterprise level. And so really, I look at it as my own personal software development team that is fluent in the language and that has the capability and the capacity to do this work without making mistakes. But the key piece to it is the person telling them what to do still has to have a brain. It's not going to create the architecture for you. It's not going to create the logic. It's not going to know what the outcome is. You can't just say /goal, make this the best solution ever. Like, it doesn't even know where to start. It's like getting in your Tesla and hitting self-drive without a destination. And so, I think that, I use these tools with context given to them, with guidance, with guidelines, with guardrails that tell them exactly what they should do and how they should do it. And when it requires a human in the loop, that's where I come in. And whether it's me reviewing a PR or me giving them guidance and saying, that's not what I wanted. Over time becomes better and faster and easier. And I tell people that every Thursday I'm able to do something that the previous Thursday I wasn't able to do.
You have figured out that piece so well, right? When to interject as a human and what to allow to autonomously work without you having to touch it. I think you've developed that stack, that solution really well. There's still a point where traditional engineering, a skill set for system architecture, a skill set of development still has to play a part in vibe coding and AI accelerated development. Without getting too far into the weeds, what does that maybe look like for a typical project, right? You're sitting down with a set of requirements. You need to get something built. What does that stack look like? What tools are you using? What skill sets are you finding that you're pulling from the most?
I was using Claude Code a lot. And then, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, they made it so that all of my token allowance ran out in like 15 minutes, which normally would make me through the 5-hour period. And then Codex came out with 5.5, and I found that it was superior to what Claude Code could do. And so I still use both of them. Claude is better at a number of things. Codex is better at a number of things. I do use them as adversaries for each other to have them do reviews. And then as far as, the tech stacks and these tools, these vibe coding tools that are online, you don't really know exactly what they're using on the back end. You don't even maybe know what models they're using. And you don't know what prompts are in there for those models when you're putting in your guidance. I think one of them was using Neon as a database. Another one was using, something else. And I said, hey, all these things are great. And they are, for somebody getting started, a really good way to dip your toe in the water. But at some point, looking at what are the things that are stable, scalable, reliable, and that you can actually take something to market with that's going to last and stand up to contact with actual users. I had to pivot. So I did use some of those tools. And now I'm very much on, some very standard pieces, and so including actual Postgres. We're using AWS for our infrastructure. We're using Docker. We're using JavaScript. We're using Hano. We're using Sneak. So we're using a lot of tools that are out there. Some of them are free open source solutions, but not everything is free. But I've tried, I haven't tried every single one of them, but everything from Lovable to, I think Google at any given point has had 4 or 5 different platforms. I've tried them all, maybe not all, but like a lot of them. And I find that, rolling your own and having a standard architecture that you start with every application makes it easier to run with and makes it easier for you to tie components of different applications together.
One thing that's pretty interesting about token utilization and vibe coding is like if you can accept the fact that you're vibe coding a prototype first and you're not immediately building a production ready application, then I went to this AI meetup a couple weeks ago and we had a token allowance in Versal to build something. And so when I started building my prompt in Versal, realized I was using up my tokens in there. So then I went to ChatGPT to build my prompt. And as part of my prompt, I was like, I want Versal to build me this prototype functioning within an hour using the least amount of tokens possible. How can I help you with that? And it was like, let's seed it with this data set so we don't have to do any API calls. I was like, perfect. Here's the data set. I quickly spit out some examples. And then it created the whole prompt for me with the data set. I fed that entire prompt to Versal, and within 40 minutes, I had only used, like a fifth of the token credit that I had, and the thing was pretty much working. I had to send it 3 prompts to like fix a couple things, and it was up and running. Now, it's not really usable because it's stagnant, doesn't have any real data in it. But now if I wanted to take that and hand it over to Codex and say, like, I want to build this application for real, I could do that. But yeah.
Like a shovel is an amazing tool, but you still have to like put your foot on it and shove it into the ground to get the dirt to come up. And it's the same with these tools. You still have to put brain power behind it and understand how to structure it and manipulate it to get the results you want. Otherwise, it's going to spit out the same result it is for everyone else. It's going to hallucinate. It's going to go off the rails. You're not going to have those guardrails to get you what you want. And so I think that's a really important thing to remember, is that it is a tool and there's still a need for human context around it to fully utilize it to its capabilities. At least right now it is.
This morning, or maybe it was last night, I don't know, Peter Steinberger, the guy that invented OpenClaw, he said, I wrote a skill that runs codex/review in a loop until there's no boo-boos anymore. And he says, caveat, it won't fix system architecture for you. So you still need a brain as a master model. And I think that's a key piece, is like, you have to know what it is that you want. And you want to get very clear definitions and break things up into small enough pieces that what you get is testable and able to be validated. And that you're using natural language and explaining what it is you want, and you understand that, versus just hoping that the system figures it out for you.
100%.
I mean, it's interesting. I always used to say that I excel at my job because I actually have a degree in communications and hospitality and tourism management, but a tech savvy brain. And so I'm able to communicate across businesses and software developers to get what I want. And so I feel very enabled by AI because now I can communicate with these AI tools, and I have the experience behind me of having to, communicate with very technical people or software engineers or offshore development teams or what have you. And I compare working with AI to a lot of those solutions in the past. It'll be interesting to see as like this next generation of, people start to graduate from college. I think it's just going to take some time, but I think you'll find that the next generation of talented software developers or technology leaders, they're going to have degrees in things like communications, business, and be learning principles of more like solution architecture, not necessarily programming. They just won't have to start there, but they're still going to have to learn those things, because I think that's the challenge right now, is you have a bunch of people, they're just experimenting, and you have people who have access to tools who don't have all this experience under their belt. And so, a lot of people are just, they had an idea and now they have an outlet to get that idea out of their head and onto the internet. Whether that's good or bad remains to be seen.
Yeah.
There's a lot of clutter out there on the internet these days, but I mean, it's good for the person that built it. They're probably really excited,
We've had years now of uses for templates, flat SaaS products, plug and play solutions, things that folks that don't have a skill set of development can utilize really easily, right? I would argue that that's actually lowered the bar for some of the solutions out there. Do you think vibe coding or even vibe design has lowered that bar even more?
Maybe temporarily. I mean, I think you're always going to have that, right? I mean, and some of that is, like I said, people are experimenting, they're learning new things. And I think I used this analogy earlier, but people were building huts before they were building cathedrals. So I don't think we've gotten to that point with AI development yet where, or maybe we have. I mean, look, the AI companies themselves are using the AI to build the tools that everyone's obsessed with. So that's obviously a success story.
Right.
I mean, well, depends which half of the internet you're on, whether or not it's a development success story, whether it's a society success story. I think that depends on who you ask. But the one quote that you had mentioned, I forget the person's name now, the generism quote, but in his article, he had mentioned something about IKEA furniture and how everything starts to look flat and soulless. And it was interesting because the thing that occurred to me about that was this entire subset of people who have built like cult social media followings around customizing their IKEA furniture, right? So, like the talented people that are going to put quality craftsmanship out into the world, they're going to find the thing that they specialize in and they're going to build their craft around that no matter what that is. So, like, I don't think that that's going to go away. There's always going to be low quality stuff and there's always going to be high quality stuff and there's always going to be all the stuff in the middle. And as a human, we're just going to have to sift through it and find the things that we like. And maybe you like the low quality stuff and maybe you like the high quality stuff. I would say as a business, like going back to business use cases, I think the higher quality stuff will bubble up to the top just like it has in the past because they'll enable businesses to be successful. Whereas, shoddy applications that are vaporware that have no real system architecture in the back end, you're going to, keep hearing these sob stories about, such and such AI tool deleted my whole database and I didn't have a backup. Well, that's your own fault because if your human developers had done that, that also would have been your own fault.
Right.
The quote you're referring to, his name is Michael Malewicz, and the quote was, "When the craft is gone, alongside curiosity, passion, and heuristics, we're left with generism. And this generism is the most nasty kind as it pushes ugly, poor quality products out there." Your IKEA furniture example, I think, was also in his article. I haven't thought about, right, the people who are then also customizing it and take it to that next level. I've been thinking about it with a lot in the context of websites because that is what me and our WordPress developer, Matt, do the most in our week. And there's a lot less horrible websites out on the internet right now, but there are also a lot less memorable ones. Now, whether that's going to take time for that craft to change and there'll be more memorable ones again, time will tell. But you highlighted a wonderful point. There will always be low quality and high quality, poor taste, exceptional taste. And I think these tools do give access to sit somewhere in the middle and give a lot of people who had no skills, maybe no taste, to actually also get into the middle, but maybe not excel. How are both of you combating not sitting in the middle? Meaning we don't want low quality design, we want high quality design. We don't want to fall in the trap of sitting in the middle. Are there any frameworks or rituals either of you are doing right now to help the first step in vibe coding or any type of AI accelerated development?
I would say half of the things that I've been working on or contributing to are ideas that I've had or that Jeff and I have both had for more than 15 years.
Right.
So it's not like I just woke up one morning and was like, oh, you know what I'm going to do next? I'm going to build a travel app, right? I built a prototype of a travel app around the way that I plan for travel that other people have also benefited from over the years. Because people are like, how do you go away for 9 days with the carry-on? And I'm like, here's my packing list. Like, this is how I use it. And I've been doing it the same way for 20 years. And if you want to use it, here's the Word document. And then I was like, oh, how could I turn this into, that was the first thing. Now, is anybody going to pay for that or use it? I don't know. I also just don't waste my time on the things that I know that I can't do. right? So I'm building this other app. I'm building the data structure and the back end and the functionality right now. And I don't care what it looks like on the front end, because at the point that I get it to the where I think it's usable and it needs a front end, I want the front end to be so beautiful and like ornate, because it's like a Gilded Aged themed app, that I'm going to find like an illustrator or a designer to help me with that piece of it. I'm able to separate the design and the functionality in my head.
That's a great framework to have, separating what you can and can't do. And you and Jeff have been refining these ideas for years. And so in a sense, that ritual has been happening for a very long time. You've already been in the refinement process before you ever wrote your first prompt or started the first line of code. Jeff, is there anything else you're doing, maybe in the more immediate sense, before you sit down and start building something?
I'm doing a significant amount of research. I've got this prompt that I use to go out, and the basics of it is find me all the leading market competitors, the features and functionality that they have, the gaps in the market, and common user frustrations. And then from that, then I say, okay, well, how could we build, a better mousetrap? Because I don't think that, to some extent, like we built TideSlot. TideSlot is very similar in features and functionality to Calendly or cal.com, but it does some more unique things that are more valuable to us based on some requirements we had that it didn't do. And I know that Google has calendaring, public calendar functionality built in, but it doesn't do everything that we needed it to. So rather than paying for it, we looked to see what was on the market and then how to make it better. And so I spend a decent amount of time doing that, looking for things that have problems in the market. And then also we talk to clients and, we get ideas from them where they say, hey, this is something that we have a big problem with. How could we automate it? So spend a lot of time more in the role of what I'd say is a business analyst. And then being able to translate that later once you put your fingers to the keyboard and start doing development to actually build the thing.
What would be your message to the person, the startup, the small business owner that finds themselves somewhere in the middle? They have vibe coded something, they love the potential, but they are staring at that gap between where they are and where they want to be, what they've built, what they actually want to launch to a customer or a consumer. What would you share with that founder or that business owner if they are in that position?
I just talked to somebody last week that's having this exact problem. So she had used 3 or 4 different AI tools. She had 3, I would say 85 to 90% solutions for her website. So like completed functioning prototypes of her website. All the content was fantastic. She had images, she had buttons, she had everything she wanted. And she was really struggling when it came to integrate a payment processing solution for her e-commerce. And that was when those tools started giving her bad advice, right? One AI tool actually told her to rebuild the whole site on another AI tool. One AI tool told her to go rebuild the whole site on Shopify. And then she was like, how do I get this like front end onto Shopify? And it told her to copy a bunch of code that did not work. And so she was hitting a wall because she was so close to being able to launch and just couldn't. And so I said, well, we can help with that, right? I mean, anybody who's in that position, I would say you could come to us. You could come to us, or any quality like web development team should be able to take what you built, re-platform it to something that's a little bit more structurally sound back end with, if it's payment processing or e-commerce, right? That's built to handle that. That's not you custom developed something for that, and launch it and host it. And that project should be significantly less expensive than it would be if you had started from scratch. So also don't feel like if you spent 40 hours vibe coding something and you're mostly happy with it, you don't need to flush all that time down the toilet. I would say you could bring that to a development team. And if a standard web project from that team is, let's say, $10,000, they should be able to do it for less than $5,000 because you already did half the work. So I think, if you are tech savvy and you are interested in vibe coding and you do need a website, if you can bring your prototype of a website to any team, you should be ahead of the curve, and you're probably less than 4 weeks away or 2 weeks away, depending on how far along you are from actually launching that site.
I always tell people they should try and do as much as they can, and learn what they can and can't do. But they should get started on it, because I think, like Lisa said, having a framework, understanding what you want, what you know, and being able to use that to at least as a head start would be good. And I think using these tools, whether it's Lovable or I forget all the others now, there's so many of them, but Replit, using those and seeing what you can do with them. And, maybe if it's just a site that's like a billboard for your business, like you might not need anything. If you get to the point where you start to require functionality or integrations or, any kind of advanced features, functionality that you can't do in there, then that's when you probably need to talk to somebody. But you also might not need to scrap everything. And the other thing is, the content, what you want on each page, what you want the layout to be, what you want imagery, colors, typography. You could do a lot of that and get a head start on any project.
Businesses and startups that are in this space and want to grow quickly with technology have even more tools and resources now at their fingertips to do so. Jeff and Lisa, thank you both so much for chatting today. There's a lot more conversation to be had on this topic. We'll probably touch on vibe design here at some point as well, but thank you for at least sharing your thoughts of where we're at right now with vibe coding and AI accelerated development. We'll talk to you all again really soon. We love to talk technology and business. Learn more about Port and Starboard or connect with us in the show notes. Fair winds until next time.